As the transfer portal market has hit hot and heavy everywhere across the country, realistically, what does it mean in Stillwater, Oklahoma? Well, we'll find all of that and more right about now.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I'll be your host on this little magical mystery tour we take today. We do have a guest coming right around the corner because right now the transfer market is really the new hot thing. Recruiting used to be the bee's knees of everybody's attention. Nowadays, transfer market's kind of taken place of that. Now, granted, the high school recruiting still is a very, very, very big deal, but the transfer market gives you the ability, i.e. like in Michigan State last year, to be instantaneously ready to rock and roll. So who better to have on the show than somebody who used to work for 247 Sports, as well as, well, you guys will know him from Pokes Report, the man, the myth, the guy, Marshall Levenson. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. I'm glad to be on here and talk some OSU football.
I appreciate it. I dig the hoodie. Super jealous. Not going to judge though. That's nice, man. I like that old O State on the arm. Like, I like that we're bringing a lot of that stuff back, dude.
Yeah.
It's just, who doesn't love the nostalgia of Randy Rutherford and Big Country Bryant Reeves wearing that O on their shorts and whatnot? It's really cool, man.
Yeah, I've had this one for a while, and it's got the things on the stripes on the sleeves, and the whole logo. It's the old font. This is a perfect hoodie.
I dig it. So your journey to Stillwater, Oklahoma, probably went a little bit different than you'd originally thought, because I found some digging, and Marshall here was quite the daggone baseball player who had the keys to some potential kingdoms. So if you could please just briefly talk about how you shifted from that to jumping into this journalism broadcasting type of scenario, or is that something you knew you always wanted to do?
Well, I mean, obviously growing up, I was like, oh, I want to be a professional baseball player. I mean, everyone says that, right? I want to be a pro sports player.
Right.
But obviously, I mean, I knew that, like, yeah, those odds are pretty slim. But freshman, sophomore year, I was pretty good, and we talked about this a little while ago. I had a pretty severe injury my sophomore year of high school, which kind of almost immediately, but pretty much after that, kind of told me, like, okay, baseball is not going to be your thing long term. So at that point, I kind of started to look around, like, okay, well, what do I want to do after high school? Where do I want to go to school? Because I'm from Louisiana originally. I was born and raised there. I was a huge LSU fan. I was like, okay, well, I want to go to LSU, and I want to do something in sports. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, probably media related. I love media. I followed recruiting big time in high school and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can get something like that. Well, that summer, I couldn't play baseball. I was in a huge cast and had a couple surgeries that summer. And so there was a sports media camp at Oklahoma State. And I had never had any allegiance to Oklahoma State. I had never really watched them. I knew about them, obviously. But and this was in 2017. So this was the summer, I guess the last season, right before the last season of Rudolph. So okay. I mean, they were a big football, and I knew that they were good and everything. But I was like, yeah, okay, let's go to Oklahoma State and do this camp. And it was like a week-long camp. You stay on campus, and basically you learn all the ins and outs of what the sports media like profession is and everything. And Oklahoma State, I think this is still true. At the time, is the only school in the country to have a sports media degree. Tons of schools have like journalism or communications where you can like have a class about sports or whatever.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma State has a sports media degree. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. And I fell in love with Oklahoma State when I was here just for that week. And then I was like, okay, well, and I was just going into my junior year of high school. So it was like, I still had time. And this is the summer after my sophomore year.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, yeah, like I think Oklahoma State might be the place I want to go in the future. And it eventually was. I got into OSU. and got here in 2019. The fall of 2019 was my freshman year. So Spencer Sanders' first year of starting. So I was kind of there for like the pure transition of like what was Oklahoma State football to what it's been the past 4 years or so. So
Wow.
yeah, I've been pretty cool to be a part of that and see all that growth and like the growth for myself. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at Oklahoma State, and then we can end up how in terms of the media stuff. But that's how I got here, and like
Awesome.
I
Oh, that's
mentioned
awesome.
before, I'll be graduating in 6 days, so it's
Yes.
gone by pretty quickly.
Congratulations. Okay, so with you having some of the inward roads, right? I know Robert Allen. The reason that he's very, very big in the scene for Oklahoma State University is because he has sideline access, locker room access, all that fun jazz. So
Mm-hmm.
Robert Allen has a very good pulse on things. So you working directly with Robert Allen over at Pokes Report, I'm sure it gave you a decent amount of connections and a decent amount of ability to kind of sift through the garbage and find really the main things that need to be taken into consideration. So with the news of a few guys coming down the pipeline, how have you heard that all of the visits went this weekend from the recruits that happened to be in Stillwater?
Yeah, I mean, everything I've seen, and I know Pokesport put out, and I think Robert put out like a really detailed piece on it of like everyone who was there. But I mean, everything went really good from what I've heard. Obviously, you've seen 2 or 3 guys commit today, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
Justin Wright was last week, and then you've
Right.
got this dribbling guy and the running back that's coming in. I mean, those are some pretty solid playmakers. That's Justin Wright was, I think, the leading tackler 2 years in a row for his team. Then you got a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher.
Yep.
A really good wide receiver from Washington State. So they're hitting the portal pretty good. And I mean, with as Oklahoma State does, they're not necessarily these top prospects, shiny 5 stars out of high school, whatever, but these are dudes that they know can play football. And that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for the huge name. They're looking for who can help us win. And so that's what they do out of high school. That's what they do out of the portal. But yeah, I mean, you can see that those visits went pretty well. And I would assume, and they had a few offensive linemen in town.
Yes,
I would assume that a lot of these guys together, when I think, and how it goes a lot of places, not just Oklahoma State, but really a lot of places, when you have a group of guys come in together, especially portal guys that are looking for somewhere immediately. High school guys can normally play it out a little bit more patient or whatever, but portal guys are looking to land somewhere now. When you have a group of them and they have a good time, a lot of times they all end up committing at like within a day or 2, 3 days, whatever. So I would assume that there's more good news coming. The fact that those 2 or 3 guys popped pretty quickly. Now they're probably not going to land everyone they had on campus, but I would assume that they're going to have some good fortunes, kind of keep continuing in. Hopefully on the offensive line for their sake, because they had some pretty stud offensive linemen visiting.
Gotcha. Okay, so I do want to talk about not only some of the guys that we had in, right? And like you said, filling a need. So I wanted to briefly kind of hit on what need the guys that we've brought in thus far fill. But real quick, I got to jump over and I got to explain to the fine people out there in Cowboy land. Today, we're partially brought to you by LinkedIn Solutions. LinkedIn Jobs is the best place for you to find your next potential candidate because, let's face it, every day is a new high-stakes gamble, right? It's a wager for your small business. And if you want to find out the best candidates for your job, go to LinkedIn Jobs right now. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people at the fastest and best pace. Your call to action is, again, go to LinkedIn Jobs/LockedOnCollege. That is LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free right now. Terms and conditions obviously do apply. All right. So, yes, just like you had said, right? We're filling needs. We're not looking for big, splashy, fun hires. Now, obviously, the offensive line is still the biggest need. It'll be the biggest need after transfer portal. It'll be the biggest need when we go through the high school recruiting cycle. It is what it is. But while we're kind of forming around that, as you know, I had Justin Wright on last week, and you're exactly right. He fills a hole. And when I say that, I mean that exact physical thing, right? Our linebackers this last season, Mason Cobb was a beast, right? Nobody will sit here and say otherwise. And Xavier Benson, you can tell, you can see the athleticism, the side-to-side lateral capabilities, but where we didn't do great was filling the gaps, right? Sometimes you got to fill a gap just to string a play out, right, and give other dudes opportunities. We didn't do that a lot this year, and that was all the way across the board from D-line to linebackers. We did not fill gaps and force teams to change what they wanted to do very often. Justin Wright is a madman on film. There's a reason his nickname is Psycho. So he fits that exact need. And then obviously you look at the running back. Yes, he had over 1,000 yards, 2 straight seasons. And with you kind of hearing grumblings about J.C. Brown no longer being on the roster. Obviously, we know that Dominic Richardson has decided to take his talents elsewhere. So with Jaden Nixon being the only kind of scat back, that's another one that makes a lot of sense. Now, the Washington State thing. We had a wide receiver from Washington State not too long ago that did just fine. So what are you kind of thinking that need is going to be from a wide receiver perspective and moving forward?
So, yeah, with especially we can touch on the other positions if you want to later, but as far as wide receiver, they knew he was obviously talented, right? They watched the tape, whatever. But I heard that when he walked in, they were like, okay, yeah, this guy is legit. I mean, 6'3", 205, 210. Like this guy, he'll get us somewhere. And that's not a knock on any of the other receivers. Like, I mean, you're not knocking Bryson Green or you're not knocking.
Well, Jaden Bray couldn't stay healthy.
Jaden Bray didn't play much this year. Talon Chetron was a true freshman, right? You've got some other guys on the outside that can play, but they're young, right?
Yeah.
And especially as you're moving into a situation now where you're going to have a fairly inexperienced quarterback. If like Garrett Rangel takes over next year, you want that guy to have as many weapons as possible, right? You don't want to hang like with a veteran like Spencer. If there's maybe 1 or 2 less options, it's like, okay, maybe we can skate by, especially since Spencer was such a great runner. That's a weapon in its own right. Garrett's not going to run. Garrett's going to throw the ball down the field. You want weapons that can go down the field. So that's the ideology behind that is just have as many weapons. Because when you have there's a couple positions. I mean, you could say this about every position, but eventually in the portal, this isn't necessarily the case. You can never have too much talent at wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
You want to add as much talent as you can because there's some positions like if you take a quarterback and you say we have 4 legit dudes that we trust. No, you don't. You're going to have 1 or 2 of those transfer out. Like you're not. It's just not going to happen. Wide receivers, you can legitimately say like, okay, we're going to rotate 6 of these guys,
right?
Whether it's slot, outside, whatever it is, right? You've got your slot receivers. You've got Brennan. You've got JP. Outside, you have Bryson, and you have a couple guys that are maybe unproven. This is to help fix that issue because they might. I mean, Jaden Bray is obviously very talented. Talon Chetron obviously very talented, but they haven't played much. So this fills that hole, and this is a guy that can go produce. And I think so. Tay Martin obviously was here for 2 years.
Yeah,
didn't really do much of anything that first year, right? He didn't come in. As far as
he was behind Tylen.
What the Oklahoma State standards are, was not really in shape, and was just not ready. He spent that year to get in shape and had a good year the next year. Now he's in the NFL.
Yes, sir.
This guy, I think, will come in more ready, and that's not a thing. That's not a knock on Tay or anything. This dude is just he's built a little bit better and ready to play now.
Well, even Tay Martin, he talks a little bit later on about how obviously he was frustrated when he got there, going from being a dude, right, at that big time D1 football program to being somebody who was asked to learn the offense, get bigger, get stronger, watch Tylen Wallace, and then fit more of that mold. I think, I think he'll even tell you he wasn't ready when he first got here. And so what you're saying is this dude's a little bit bigger, a little bit more ready to fit our system, you think?
Yeah, and I would say so. I mean, and I can't remember the exact time of year that Tay Martin committed, but I remember where I was, and it was not this early in the process, right? Tay committed, I think it was in the spring or maybe even later, where he was a late addition to the team, and it was like he was already behind the 8 ball. Everyone had already gone through winter workouts together. They had gone through, I think he was sometime in the spring or the summer where he didn't have as much time to mentally or physically prepare. This guy will be there, should be a mid-year enrollee, I would assume. And will be there in just a couple. I mean, he'll be ready to roll like soon. So he'll have that entire period of time that I don't remember that Tay Martin got that first year. So I think that'll be a little bit of a difference as well.
True. See, that's why you're on here. You help us filter. So before we move on to some of the more positions, right? Because we got a lot of
Mhm.
things to kind of knock out here. One thing I did kind of want to get to, because you've already hinted at it. Nowadays, when you're looking for transfer portal, you're looking for somebody to come in, slide in, not necessarily immediately, but pretty close to, right? It
Mhm.
used to be you brought in the JUCO guys because
Yeah.
they were used to the college scene. They were a little bit more physically ready to go and required less development. Well, now you have the transfer market that's kind of more suited to that.
Right.
But we're seeing something a little bit new. And I think you're seeing that, I don't know, the transfer market's not as crazy as last year, or maybe I'm misremembering, but it almost seems like the transfer thing, it's going to start narrowing itself down because the last couple of seasons, what was it, like 40 something percent of dudes that went to the
Yeah.
transfer portal ended up not finding a school of the same caliber or size, and so a lot of people,
Yeah.
it's just like a relationship. I want the greener grass. And then you go over there and you find out Mr. Greener Grass don't have a job or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more of that while you're covering the recruiting scene?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think last year, I think the number was 47% of players. You said 40 something that didn't, if they were at Power Five, they
Yes.
ended up below Power Five or just
Right.
nowhere at all,
Yeah.
right? Which is a
Mhm.
crazy number considering that they had
It
over
is.
1,000 guys in the portal, which they've already hit this year. I think at this point they're probably 1,200, 1,300 guys. And if you're thinking that, which it probably will, because the numbers are the numbers,
Yeah.
there will be probably 45, 47% of guys. You're talking 500 to 600 guys that are not going to be playing at the level that they were on scholarship, by the way. They were on
Mhm.
scholarship. They're not going to be at the same level. So they're forced to go below, or they
Mhm.
just don't find anywhere at all.
Yep.
So I think you're going to see natural corrections over the next couple of seasons, not by any rule changes or anything. I mean, there could be, but I think you're going to see people, because right now everyone's first initial reaction is like, okay, well, I want a better situation. Let me enter the portal, and then they just do. I think you're going to start seeing people being like, okay, is there a better situation?
Right.
Like, what are honestly, like, if you're a guy that's like, okay, I've been here for 3 years, I'm not a starter, I'm a special teams guy or something like that, or maybe I don't even play. Maybe I was pretty good in high school. I was an upper 3 star, maybe a 4 star guy, but like I haven't played in 3 years, essentially, right?
Right.
Outside of
Yeah. Yeah.
practice. What are other schools going to be able to look at you and say, okay, yeah, we know this guy from 3 years ago was good, but like, what is he now? It's not like you can go in and work out for them and practice with them or whatever. And they'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
like the NFL, you can go in and work out and try out. That's not a thing. So you have to like really like understand what's happening and like understand who is out there. And yes, it's illegal, but it happens. Schools are going to tamper, right? They're going to
Till the end
reach
of
out.
time.
And I mean, and this sounds kind of weird to say, I know, because it's illegal, but like if you're going to leave, make sure you have somewhere you can go, right?
Yeah.
And so, which is kind of like a double-edged sword, because if you're following the rules, that's not possible.
Right.
But it's
Oh,
kind of with the
yeah.
times, that's what some people have to do. And so that's what I think, if people are going to have to start like look in the mirror and be like, okay, who am I actually valuable to?
Yeah.
Am I more valuable here where I'm a second or third stringer and maybe get a crack if someone goes down, or maybe someone's just not good or whatever, or do I try to go find somewhere else where like people may not even know who I am?
Yeah.
So that's going to be the transition over the next few years, I think, is people actually coming to that realization of like what is actually out there for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, grass is not always greener. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of these guys, they jump in the transfer portal out of whether it be boredom, or they feel disrespected, or they feel underutilized, or there's a multitude and
Mm,
myriad of reasons why, right? But
yeah.
just like you said, actually I didn't think of it like that, which I'm very glad you brought up. You don't get to try out. Like, you don't get to take your film from the 4 or 5 games you may have played this season and send it. You don't get to do any of that. So
Yeah.
somebody's taking you either on face value or what you have done that is very readily available, right?
Hmm.
So highlights and things of that nature. So it does
Yeah.
make it a lot more difficult. Now, have you seen any of the negative drawbacks matriculated into the high school recruiting scene yet?
Yeah, I mean, from a numbers standpoint, absolutely. I mean, the more like, okay, if you look at teams that are, and COVID has also kind of thrown this off because everyone gained eligibility, so that's thrown off numbers. But even before that, if you normally take, let's just say you take the normal 25, if you take 25 high school guys, and maybe you take a transfer or two in some years, like you used to or whatever, and they have to sit. But say you normally take 25 guys out of high school. Well, those are all 17, 18-year-olds that you need to develop for the most part, and they still need to learn everything about college football. They still need to learn everything about college and like the actual academic side of it and balancing those. But now you say you maybe take 15 to 18 high school guys and you keep 7 scholarships for like 5 to 7 portal guys, right? Well, that's 5 to 7 high school guys that aren't getting a scholarship offer from you. And that's going to happen. That trickles out. It happens everywhere. So there's going to be a ton of guys who normally would have gotten scholarships to the, maybe you just don't get a Power 5 offer. Maybe you're going from getting Big 12 offers or Pac 12 offers to getting like offers from like SMU or UNT or whatever, like, which still obviously you're going to school for free. But then there's those guys that aren't getting offers from SMU or UNT, so they're going to maybe an upper D2, and then there's guys that aren't getting those. So it trickles down. There's going to be less people getting scholarship offers because schools are saying, okay, well, why not bring in this more experienced guy that can help me now at a position than worrying about a guy that may have to develop for 1, 2, 3 years before they can get on the field. So yeah, from a number standpoint, absolutely. And you mentioned it, schools can now completely change a roster from year to year, and you can go from a team like you're probably going to see Colorado do it. Colorado won one game this year. I would not be surprised if Colorado went out there and won 7 games next year. Like
in the Pac-12, man, I would argue they win more.
I mean, you can see them go win 8 games, 9 games. I mean, you probably lose to the big ones in the Pac-12 right now, because you're probably still gonna have some young talent. But I mean, there's gonna be teams that completely flip their fortunes, and I mean, go from and I mean, you might see, like, I cover A&M. Obviously, they have tons of talent. They just had a completely down year this year, whether it was because of injuries or just, I mean, they had a ton of injuries, but also they just weren't good at times, right?
Right, yeah.
You're going to see them bring in players at positions that are going to fill in because they've had 20 guys enter the portal, which means what? They can bring as many guys in. Yeah. So it's like they're going to completely change some position groups and flip things around from guys. And A&M has the ability to go get guys from LSU, from Bama.
Yes, they do.
USC, like from other top Power 5s. Maybe there's a guy at Georgia that was a 4 or 5 star guy that's playing behind another 4 or 5 star guy that's maybe older that wants to play. And it's like, oh, well, A&M has an opening, or Florida has an opening, or whatever. So you're going to see guys like that bounce around from those power schools. But there's tons of pros and there's tons of cons. And pretty much every school is going to get hit with both. Like, you think, okay, Alabama's as good as anybody. Well, they've had almost as many portal entries as anybody out there. But they're still Alabama. They're going to get the best portal guys out. So it's like
Jameer Gibbs.
Exactly.
They didn't have to put in the effort, right? He was the best running back available, and they got him like that.
Yeah, and it's like, and they're probably going to do that with some other guys this year. I mean, like, schools are going to keep doing that. But because there's so many portal guys, you're going to see teams like Oklahoma State. They're not going to get every single 5-star out of the portal, but every once in a while, you're going to see them, if it's a correct position need and a fit, you're going to see them go get a guy that was a former high 4-star, 5-star guy. But for the most part, you're going to see them go get the guys they've gotten. They're going to go get that Western Kentucky playmaker, or that Ivy League offensive lineman, or like the guys they know are hard workers, they're smart, and they're going to produce.
Correct. Yeah, it's crazy how, the Cowboy culture has become so universally respected and understood. Like people like Justin Wright, that is why he came to Stillwater.
Yeah,
like, that was the biggest
thing. I mean, when they offered
him was that. So other than kind of the recruiting and the trickle-down effect that it's having. Is there anything that you think specifically Oklahoma State should be focused on other than O-line right now? Are you hearing any rumblings? Because we're about to get into the coaching stuff, of course, but right now, what is maybe another position need that O State fans aren't exactly taking into consideration because we're so worried about O-line, O-line, O-line?
Yeah, so I would say the interior defensive line
Okay.
is a big one. Obviously, they're trying to get. They had that Anthony Goodlow, the Tulsa defensive lineman, in. I think he's another guy that you could plug in there, because you lost Tyler Lacey, you lost Brendan Evers, and I know they were big ends. They're like 3 techniques. They're not the Colin Oliver, Trace Ford types, but a bigger guys in the middle, right? I think is what you're going to see them. They're probably going to get 1 or 2 of those, and Goodlow might be that guy.
That'll be good.
And I think those are good ones. That'll be offensive line, the interior defensive line.
Okay.
They could go get in. They could find an edge rusher. You've still got Colin, and I like guys like Nathan Latu. Not a lot of people may know who that is or know who some of these other younger guys are. You got Deshaun Brown.
Sean Brown, I did a video on him a couple months ago. He was my pick to be that next big time dude.
So I thought the same thing
too.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think you're going to see guys like him step up next year, but I also think in the interior you're going to see Aiden Kelly, who was an All-American in high school. Like I think this next year will be his year to finally, because it's hard to play even if as talented as he is. I mean, Tyler Lacey was a proven like veteran captain. It's hard to unseat guys like that. But now that they're not there,
sure. Well, and he had Sione and Sam Tuialamaka. I know Tuialamaka.
Those are all older guys that you're not really gonna just unseat them with talent. Like you have to be there a while to take over those guys. So I think offensive line, interior defensive line, you already filled your linebacker spot.
Right.
And then if there's a corner available, you might go get – I think they offered the guy from Tulsa, number 1. Can't remember his name.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants in, you probably bring a guy like that in, or you maybe just bring in a guy for depth. I mean, you're not losing much of anything at that position, right? DeMarco Jones is transferring, and you've got Thomas Harper. I would count him more as a safety. But a guy like that, just one guy, go fill some depth. And I mean, I think that's really it. Other positions, you've already filled your running back. I think that was just, get some depth. You lose Dom, CJ is not on the roster. So you want 3-4 scholarship guys at those positions at running back. So you just maintain those numbers. Other than that, I think you're fine at safety. I think you're fine at quarterback. And I know that's a big topic of discussion and everything.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and so I know everyone's like, "Oh, who are we going to get from the portal?" And there's obviously people on Twitter spreading those rumors, but you're fine at quarterback. But yeah, I think the trenches. I mean, that's how you win football games. That's interior trenches right now is what they're going for.
Very, 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 very fair. Okay, so you're not off the hook yet, right? We gotta break down some of what people may or may not have been hearing as far as some of the coaching stuff going around. So real quick, we're gonna, kind of talk about that and a little bit more, but of course, I've got to kind of dive in here a little bit further and talk about Simply Safe. If you're somebody that really just, has concerns about security and the way the world is going at this very moment, it should be a little bit of everybody. And as December comes in, that is typically a time when burglaries and things of that nature spike, right? People come take packages off your front porch. Simply Safe is the best home security system, has been for 3 years in a row, voted by U.S. News, World, and Report. It gives you emergency 24/7 professional monitoring agents, not like the ones in San Francisco, but the ones that actually do the job for you. It's exclusive with Simply Safe. So again, do not miss the chance to be the one who saves your family from potentially having any major issues going into this holiday season. Get yourself 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege today. Again, to get yourself 40% off of a new security system by using the promo code LOCKEDON at simplysafe.com, you can get yourself started right now. Protect your family. It's the best sense of security you can find. And we're back. All right, so before we skedaddle on out of here, could you dispel or maybe just kind of shift people's thought process in this coaching? Because we've heard everything from, it's going to be a massive carousel and we're replacing a bunch of dudes. And we've also heard nothing but Dickey's gone and McAdoo scoots over to another position type thing. So is it on the high side of the fence, the low side of the fence? Obviously, maybe somewhere more in the middle. What are you hearing?
All right, so I don't know anything about specific personnel changes or who's going, who's coming in. Even if I did, I probably wouldn't say it. But I will say and this is I think what the biggest shift in people's minds I think is needed to take. Look at what Gundy has done in the past of how he makes changes. It is not in December. It's not before a bowl game. It's not before signing day. Right. And it's not going to be just out of complete nuke the staff, change everything. Like, no. Especially with the way the transfer portal is today, you're not just getting rid of like an entire offensive staff. That's season career suicide, right? Like you would be blowing everything up. What he has done in the past, if he makes changes this season, I don't know if he will. I mean, obviously there's a ton of reasons you might think that they should. I was not a fan of some of the play calling myself. There's obviously things to be, what's the word? Things to tweaked, things to build upon, right? So what Gundy has done, he has always, unless it's been a guy like Jim Knowles that leaves for another job. Right. And I'll touch on that in a second, whenever Gundy makes a change, it is well out of the season, and it's probably even 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks after the fact, to where Gundy can sit back and say, okay, who is out there? Who do I want? And he also waits for the coaching carousel to be pretty much over so that once he does identify who he wants, he's not fighting 10 other schools for the same guy. He can just go in, pluck them out of the situation they're in, and no hassle, have your conversations without worrying about, okay, this guy's being contacted by a bunch of other universities and he has a huge market, right? That could be a guy that was already hired somewhere else, right? That could be a guy, and it could be a big school, small school, whatever it may be. But like when they brought in, was it Yursich from, where did he come from?
Shippensburg State
University. Shippensburg. That was later in the process. When they brought in a couple years ago, Sean Gleason out of Princeton, that was later in the process. Yeah. When they replaced Knowles with Mason, Knowles left right after Bedlam, or right after that. It was like basically this time last year, because it was right after they announced the Broyles.
It was. Apparently there was some contention on him coaching the bowl game or not.
So, yeah, there was obviously a whole lot of conversations that happened there. But he signed his contract with Ohio State right after the Broyles award, right? Mm-hmm. Which was the Broyles award was announced like 3 or 4 days ago. So it was like the first week of December, right? I don't think Mason was announced until, I think he was there for like the last week or so of like workouts, of winter workouts or something like that. So I think he was brought in like mid to late January. So, I mean, it was a legit like 6 to 8 weeks before they even replaced Knowles, right?
Right. Yeah.
He does that on purpose. That is Gundy's philosophy. He's not going to rush into something. He's going to sit down, do his research. He's not going to get desperate over something. And this is if he makes a change. I don't know if they will, but if he does make a change, and in this, I hope this has people calm down on Twitter, because there's freaking rumors everywhere, right? And there's people on Twitter, I'm not going to name names, that just don't trust them, right? There's people that there's maybe 4 or 5 people in the Oklahoma State media market that I would say trust them without a doubt, right?
Right.
If there's a change, it will come probably in December or in January. And it'll probably be not as much as people are thinking. There's probably, maybe if there's a change, 1 or 2 positions is all I really see happening. They're not going to have some mass turnover unless something crazy happens in the next few weeks, right? Whatever. I don't know what that would be, or what would it take to get that done.
Are you hearing anything about, which I know North Texas has Casey Dunn very high up? Do you know if there's 3 people they've narrowed it down to, 5 people, 2 people? Do you have any clue? Have you heard anything there?
I don't know a number. I'm sure there's a short list somewhere of like, because every coach always has a list of people that if for whatever reason I need to make a change, here's my first phone calls. Or every athletic director has that list, right? I'm sure Gundy and Weiberg have a list of like, if for whatever reason Dunn gets hired away, here's who we're calling first. Or if we need a new, this is gonna sound crazy. If we need a new strength and conditioning coach, if Glass says, you know what, I've had a great career, I'm retiring. That's not happening, people. I'm just hypothetically saying.
Right. No,
here's the 3 names we're going to reach out to first. Everyone has short lists. I don't know how many people are on that list, or I'm sure there's conversations being had behind closed doors of things that may happen, just having preliminary conversations with agents or with people. I don't know who that's with or who that may be. But if there are changes, it probably will not happen for a while. Like at least a month, I would say, because they're going to get well out of the season and they're going to wait for everyone to get on campus that's supposed to be on campus as far as players and everybody, make sure everyone's situated, and then they'll worry about that.
Now, in doing so, do you not see a little bit of potential issue with that? Because what I mean is, if you're
losing
looking
out on your guy,
yes, if you're looking to retain dudes, right? Wouldn't it be a little bit more potentially beneficial to know for those guys, okay, he might be leaving, but I know we're safe with this guy coming in.
Yeah.
Do you think that we lose potentially some extra players by waiting so long?
I mean, is it possible? Sure. But I think at this point, if there were going to be people leaving for staff reasons, they would have already left. Okay. And as far as transfer guys, I mean, we've already seen 15 guys enter the portal or something, a pretty decent number, right? Some of which was for maybe they're looking for more NIL opportunities. Some of it they're looking for just more playing time. Some of it maybe personal stuff, whatever the issue may be. It's happening everywhere for a dozen different reasons. If they were that worried about the staff, they would have probably already left. But I do understand, like, okay, also there's a thing of like, if you wait, will the guy that you want to hire, will he get hired by somebody else? Could that happen? Absolutely. I mean, things move quickly with other schools, but also I am of the opinion, and I've seen there's been some amazing hires like Wisconsin hiring Luke Fickell. Great hire, right? He goes and gets Phil Longo as offensive coordinator. Yeah. Great hire. There's also a couple hires of head coaches or coordinators. It's like, I don't know about that. Like that was just like, I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to burn bridges anywhere in the future. But like, there's a couple hires where it's like, why was that your guy? Like, what? There's, in my opinion, 5-6 better options that are available. Like what? And so I think it's a double-edged sword. If you wait too long, you might lose your guy.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you wait long enough, there might be someone that didn't get picked up that you thought might have, or maybe they were in discussions for a ton of other schools. Maybe just wasn't the right opportunity. And like I said, we've seen this happen before. Someone gets hired by a school, and then a month later, some bigger school or some better opportunity comes, and they snatch them away from the school they just got to. Like, I mean, you saw it a few years ago with Cliff Kingsbury. Now, I know that's with the NFL, but he got hired by USC, and then, 3 days later, got picked up. You saw last year, what's his name? That's at Louisiana Tech now, the head coach, Sonny Cumbie. When the new Texas Tech head coach got in there, they said they're retaining Sonny Cumbie, and they had announced that he was going to be there on a new contract. Well, then Louisiana Tech comes in and says, "Oh, we want you to be our head coach." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was a Louisiana Tech guy. It's like, "Okay, well, I'm going there." Just because someone gets hired doesn't mean that they're absolutely locked in. Like, I'm not. Yeah. You can go get a guy, and maybe it's a big name guy, like they got Derek Mason, who is proven, and that's a guy that was in the SEC, or it may be a type where it's like you go get some obscure name, like it was Yursich from Shippensburg State or whatever. I mean, and Gundy loves finding those diamonds in the rough. He loves finding players that are diamonds in the roughs, and he loves finding coordinators where people just pass them up, or position coaches where it's like no one even looks at them because they're at some weird university. But Gundy's like, nope, I want that guy. And everyone, if he hires some obscure dude, people are going to hate on him for a few months, and then that dude's going to have success, and they're like, oh, well, look, Gundy's a master. It happens every single time. It's a rotating door. But as far as who are going to be in staff changes, I have no idea. But if there are some, I don't expect it to be that many.
All right, brother, man. Well, last thing, I'm gonna squeeze some lemon juice out of here. All right, I'm gonna get you to slip up and say something fun. Give me a percentage, or what are the odds of Cale Gundy joining his brother in Stillwater?
I think Oklahoma. I'll put it this way: I think if he were to join, joining Oklahoma State for him is more likely than anywhere else. Yeah. That's my take on it. I don't
necessarily see it, but it'd be nice.
I mean, yeah, he's been around Stillwater. Like, he was at some of the Oklahoma State games, right? I mean, he was in Norman yesterday for the Oklahoma State, like the Bedlam thing. Like, he's around people in this area, right? So, I mean, like, his whole family's still here. I think at his point in his career, him and his brother have always been on the opposite side of each other as far as careers, OU, Oklahoma State. It would make sense storyline-wise for him to end up here. In what position that would be, I don't know. Even if you didn't have a position opening as wide receiver coach or quarterbacks coach, anything that he's coached before, offensive analyst is a thing you could see do. I mean, like, you can have an unlimited amount of those. I mean, I would think that I see him joining Oklahoma State before joining anywhere else. Not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's at this point for him, it's probably Oklahoma State or nowhere. That's my take on it. That's not me talking to him or anything. That's just that's how I see that situation probably playing out.
Oh, y'all didn't have dinner last night? I'm sorry.
No. But no, I mean, right, I would say if there's an opening at one of those positions, wide receiver, QB, whatever it may be, that's probably an easy answer to fill in. Someone you don't really have to worry about, that you know what they're talking about. Yeah. So I would say that's so. Yeah, I would say it's probably Oklahoma State or nowhere.
So before you let the people know where they can find you, how they can see what you're doing, could you just give me a brief tidbit? Because I know I've seen On3Sports slowly coming on the scene. Yeah. You know, I'll be honest with you, On3Sports reminds me a lot of Locked On, right? Somebody you see slowly, you see here and there bits and pieces, and then all of a sudden it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, how did you kind of get into the On3Sports realm?
So they've been around for maybe 18 months or so. I think they went live August of 21. And so Shannon Terry is the owner and CEO of On3. He also built Rivals and 247. So all three sites in the industry that are like the big ones in terms of recruiting, he built them all, right? So he's the mastermind at that, and this is his biggest and best project, right? And this is his everything that he's worked towards, and everything that every good piece of everything he's done is in place. And so they reached out to me actually in March. One of their guys sent me a message and just said, "Hey, we've seen your stuff. Like, would you be interested in possibly talking to us about a position we have open here?" And it was actually with Michigan, the Michigan site. And so I actually covered Michigan for 3 or 4 months, and then they were like, "Hey, we have this A&M site opening up. It's ground level right now. There's one guy there right now. We want to bring you on as part-time," because I haven't graduated yet. I actually just signed my full-time contract last week. So
congrats, brother.
Over the past few months, been part-time, but basically working full-time. It's just while I'm in school, but was with Michigan for a few months, and then in July switched over to the A&M site. Been with them. I mean, it's incredible. They're already towards the top of the industry, right? There's some things that they do that Rivals or 247 don't, in terms of NIL and just the way that they do some of their composite rankings and stuff. It's definitely they're growing. I think now they're probably at 25 schools or something like that. So they're all the big ones right now. In the Big 12, they've got Texas and K-State. I would assume in the next year, you probably see OU, you probably see Oklahoma State, you probably see some of TCU, Baylor, schools like that. So it's going to be a ton of growth over the next year or two. But yeah, On3, it's really fun to work.
That's awesome.
For On3, yeah.
And for everybody out there, how can they find you? How can they reach you?
Yeah.
How can they blow up your DMs and irritate the tar out of you?
I would say for Twitter, Marshall Levy On3, which is just Marshall 2 L's, Levy Levy On3. That's where I am like 99% of the time as far as communicating. I have Instagram and Facebook. I'm not really on there much, but it's just Marshall Levenson on there. But yeah, if you have any questions or whatever, send me DMs, tag me and stuff, whatever. I'm pretty interactive on there. So yeah, Marshall Levy On3 on Twitter, and yeah, come say what's up. Come ask me some questions in the DMs.
Well, this is the first time we've had Marshall on the show, but I know for a fact we'll be doing stuff collectively, kind of as this progresses. Because for me, I like the linear line of how you got into the game and how you got to On3. So, for example, like I'm the 56th college host Locked On's ever hired.
Okay,
so
there you go.
It's just, eventually, I tell people all the time, right? And I don't know, I believe it. It sounds kind of corny, but right now I'm just a little fish in a really big pond. Yeah. But eventually I'm going to be the only shark in the daggone thing. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I can appreciate and respect the rise. I love what you do. I love hearing and reading about what you were kind of putting forth with Pokes Report. So we know that no matter where you go and what you do, you're going to be very, very successful. I know you're going to kick tail over there in Aggie land. But remember, I mean, you were an Aggie to begin with for your degree.
Yeah.
And you can be the orange-clad Aggie at some point in time later on in your career as well, right? It was a full circle, this thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's going to be some people listening that'll be tuning into I'm sure that you know someone at graduation this weekend, or you'll be there or whatever. But yeah, I'll be walking across the stage at like 10:30. Right. So that'll conclude my Oklahoma State. I'll be an alum at that point, but obviously I'll always be in the know and always be tied in.
Anytime you go on air for A&M, can you accidentally end it with "Go Pokes"? Just
yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, brother, man. Well, hey, man, thank you very, very much for joining the show. I know that you do still have your finger on the pulse in all things Oklahoma State University. I know you have a lot of people that contact you, right? And ask you about, have you heard this information? What do you think about this information? So I'm glad that you could kind of break down some of what we're hearing and not hearing, not necessarily about names, but more over the process, right? This is what Gundy traditionally does. This is what he traditionally doesn't do. I think it's good for everybody to calm down a little bit, right? Take a breath of fresh air and soak it all in. So again, I thank you very much for your time, sir. Everybody, O-State Nation, say hello once again to Mr. Marshall Levenson, and then say goodbye as he's about to walk off the stage and leave us for Aggie land. No big deal. He'll always be a poke at heart. All right, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you very, very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, boss. So before we finish on up, I do want to take this moment to make things a little bit more, I don't want to say somber is the word, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I felt comfortable speaking for everybody in Oklahoma State Cowboy Nation, that we all currently have our hearts with Mike Leach and his family. Please say a prayer, right? Please, if you remember how important collegiate football is nationally, you will know the Mike Leach name. The sound bites that Mike Leach gives are pure gold. He's an icon of the sport. And sadly, after his major heart attack, the reports today aren't great. He's in critical condition still yet. He has been, I guess, from what I've found, somewhat unresponsive to the surgeries. And he's supposedly been moved to a different level of care. And, it should be a reminder that we live our lives at 190,000 miles an hour, right? You go to work, you come home, you pay your bills, take your kids to baseball, football, basketball, help with homework, do dinner, go to bed. We oftentimes forget that can be stripped away from you very, very, very quickly. Everything, whether it be, your ability to interact, or your ability to coach, or your ability to speak, or your family's ability to cope with whatever's happening. So again, this is a time where all of college football country should be able to come together, especially us in Stillwater, America. For Mike Leach and his family, please say a prayer, and please have your hearts and thoughts and minds go out to him and his family as they're going through a terrible time. Right? It hurts. He coached at Texas Tech, but yeah, it sucks. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. So everybody in Starkville, aka Stark Vegas, our hearts and prayers are with you as well. As always, guys, I love you all. God bless. Go Pokes. We will do this again tomorrow. Later, y'all.